Well, Frank, thank you so much for doing this. We were chatting beforehand backstage, and you were telling me that it's been a year since you went public with your bid to buy TikTok. Obviously, this is something that people have read a lot about, seen a lot about, are following the developments. Maybe some TikTok users in the room had some disruptions earlier this year. You said that you were feeling better about the bid today than you were then, and that there's been a lot of progress made. Why are you feeling that way?
Well, for two reasons. Number one, I think it's clear that if TikTok is going to be sold, it's going to be sold in compliance with the legislation. There's not going to be some licensing of the algorithm or any kind of entanglement with the Chinese technology. And as far as we know, we're the only bidder that actually would meet the criteria laid out in the legislation. And the second reason I'm feeling great about it is that we've already won in by many measures, because we now have a pipeline of use cases that collectively have over 1.5 billion users that have made inquiries about this new upgraded internet and how it would work. An internet, in other words, where individuals own and control their data and their identity and their relationships.
Right. So, this bid is part of Project Liberty, which is your view for a very different decentralized internet.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a really important a point to make here. Project Liberty was not established to buy TikTok per se. Project Liberty is about re-engineering, redesigning the internet so that we all are in charge of ourselves. We own ourselves again, have agency, and as I said, control and own our identity and our data. The TikTok bid was serendipitous. It was, okay, here's this piece of legislation. This TikTok is going to either be shut down or divested or sold, and wow, we have technology that we've built now from the ground up over the last 5 years that is a clean American, made in America stack that can onboard the 170 million users in their data, meet the national security criteria, and catalyze this new internet.
And part of this, I'm not sure if you just mentioned this or you've mentioned it, you've talked about it a lot, is this idea that some of the other bidders would not be willing to would back away from buying TikTok if they did not get access to the algorithm or if the algorithm wasn't part of the deal. You've said the algorithm isn't important to us, we would still buy it anyway, which is surprising to some people and a little bit confusing to the layperson. What is the value of TikTok without that very powerful algorithm that is just feeding me cooking videos and NBA dunks and snowboarding and whatever other content is coming across my very male feed?
Yeah, well, the number we've put on U.S. TikTok with the user base, with the data, and without the algorithm is $20 billion. We think that's a very accurate number for what it's worth, and that's what's supported by our modeling. Look, the TikTok is not going to be sold with the algorithm. China has made that crystal clear. And remember, ByteDance is not a normal company. The golden share is owned by China, and they have the last say as to if it's sold and to whom. So, and they've made it clear that none of their technology, the algorithm specifically, is national IP. On the other hand, the legislation that requires a shutdown or sale has made it clear that there needs to be 100% disentanglement for any buyer must disentangle from the Chinese technology, because that's where the threat lies. The reason why Congress passed this legislation and did it in such a bipartisan way is they were alarmed when they found out not just that China had information on 170 million Americans, but that China was using it actively to manipulate what 170 million Americans were thinking.
Mm-hmm. So I guess from a user perspective, what I'm curious about is, would you be afraid or, I would, if I was in your position, I think I would feel a little bit nervous about the idea of, okay, we've won this bid, we've got TikTok, that's great, but the algorithm is now gone. What is the value for users if the algorithm is gone? And are you afraid that users, once they logged into their feeds, saw it wasn't feeding them the same kind of stuff that they're used to seeing, that they would?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's not going to happen like turning on or off the lights here in this room. There's a transition period. So it's going to be a year, 8 to 18 months of transition from the current version of TikTok to the new version of TikTok. But secondly, and more importantly, we need to demystify the algorithm a little bit. Yes, TikTok has a powerful algorithm. It's designed actually to specifically addict, engage, and scrape people's data, right? And as a propaganda tool, then to feed those people who are addicted information that is with pro-Chinese sentiment. So we're not looking to replicate that algorithm. That's not an algorithm that should be replicated, and that's why the legislation was passed in the first instance. Lastly, big data, small algorithm will beat big algorithm, small data any day. So there are lots of people, and we have many of them in our employ, that are experts at creating algorithms. And by the way, the world is moving into a place where we'll be curating our own algorithms. Mm-hmm. We now have an app store. Soon there'll be an algorithm store. You'll be picking and choosing algorithms that combined create the feed that you want. So this is the power of the technology as it's advancing. The fundamental point of Project Liberty is not that the tech is bad or the tech shouldn't advance or the internet isn't wonderful. The fundamental point is that we should each own and control our data, because our data is our personhood. It is us in the digital age. We should own ourselves. We should permission the use of our data rather than being surveilled. We should go on the internet and signal what we're interested in rather than being targeted. So that's at the core of the project. Now let's fix the tech so it's in harmony with those principles.
So I want to come back to that in a second, because it's super interesting, and it's obviously key to TikTok as kind of a vehicle for this vision. But you have said publicly that you've been in discussions with the White House. Your bid has been named among several others. You've been a bit more public about it than some of the others, like Amazon was one of the last ones that was reported. Take us inside what the current state of play is like for TikTok. Trump has said that he wants to delay it again. When was the last time that you spoke with the White House, and what's the sense you get about what the latest is?
My sense is right now is that the TikTok issue, just amongst the array of issues that are occupying people's time and attention, and in particular the White House's attention, is lower down.
It's declined a little bit recently.
At the moment. That number one. Number two, what is becoming clearer is that any bid or any consortium, any buyer group that thinks they're going to license the algorithm or somehow work around the legislation, I think that ship has sailed. Because that was really what was happening before, was kind of, can we kind of keep TikTok alive and meet the somehow meet the letter of the legislation, but not the spirit.
And are you kind of referring to the Oracle, bid, which is there's some sort of level of oversight? It's not totally sold completely. Is that what you're alluding to?
Yeah, it's a Project Texas 2.0 kind of version, right? Which is, let's see if we can somehow work around this problem. And there is no workaround. And the legislation is, not only is the legislation amply clear, but what's fascinating to me is that the Supreme Court decision is even more explicit in what is actually required to fulfill that criteria. So it's if there's a transaction, and that's a big if, because China may just decide to shut it down. If there's a transaction, it's going to have to be to a buyer that complies with that law, which means a buyer that can actually is interested in buying and onboarding the user base and the data on a clean stack that doesn't require any of the Chinese technology.
So, do you think that the trade war and this kind of ongoing trade dispute with China has made an acquisition of TikTok less likely?
unclear to me. I think that I read a lot at the expiration of the 75 days that it was the trade war that was messing up a deal with TikTok. But in fact, what the impediments to a TikTok deal at the time, other than what I've just alluded to, which is the lack of compliance with the law, is that Congress, Republican members of Congress, stood up and said, well, wait a second, this is not complying, and we're going to enforce the law. And secondly, China actually perked up and said, there's no deal here without China, without China explicitly signing off on it. And I'm not sure there was a full appreciation of that either, that this is not just a normal commercial deal, that we've made thousands of in our lifetime. As businesses, you're making deals all the time in a commercial setting. This is not a typical commercial setting.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of return to the question, have you heard from the White House at all about this in recent days, or you said it's fallen down on their list of priorities?
Yeah, that's kind of code for not a lot of conversation since the 75 days expired.
Sure. To return to something else that you were talking about, you mentioned, we talked about Project Liberty, but it's part of this decentralized social networking protocol, and that's something that you're incredibly focused on, and you've made it to your mission to make a safer, healthier online ecosystem in conversation. I know we kind of talked about it a little bit, but I really want you to kind of explain a little bit to the audience about what that is, because it still makes my head spin a little bit. You explained it at a lunch in front of a lot of very important and smart reporters, including myself, some of whom kind of understood it and some didn't. But if you could elaborate a little bit on what that is.
Think of it as in two parts. Think of it as one part of it being we have a certain set of rights and principles that guide us in this country, based on a set of freedoms and liberties and human rights. And data should be one of those human rights. It's what provides us agency and control and sovereignty in our lives. So there is that element of the common good aspect of the project. But there's also an element here of massive amount of economic value is going to be created. The internet is going to change. It's not going to look, I don't have to tell any of you about what the harms are of the current internet, whether it's polarization or mis and disinformation or harms to kids and so forth. Any parent here with young kids is having this conversation at the dinner table about social media. This is not like, I'm not here to deliver the news. The zeitgeist is changing. The internet's going to change. There's going to be opportunity with that change. For me, this is very much deja vu. We started a telecom company in 1993 called RCN. It was when the World Wide Web was nascent, right? It was 89. We could see the world changing. You could see that with the internet coming and eventually everybody being connected, it was going to cause massive change. And it could be good change. It could empower people. And so we raised a lot of money. We put fiber optics in every big city in America. The company was called RCN, and we took on the baby bells. Why? They were all on copper wire. High-speed internet required fiber optics. And it was interesting to us that when people came to sign up, many would not sign up to, even though we were the first in the world to bundle one provider, all your service, phone, cable, and high-speed internet. Why? Because they wanted their phone number, and we couldn't give them their phone number. Because up until 1996, the 7 baby bells said, we own the phone number. And by the way, you couldn't talk. Well, if you had one provider, and I lived in New England at the time, I couldn't talk to someone in Florida or California. Those were separate, those are different baby bells.
Yeah. Okay?
In 1996, phone numbers became portable, and the telecoms became interoperable. So you could pick up the phone and call anybody else. It was your number, you had the power, you were not a product, you were a customer, and you could decide which telecom to use. Think of your social graph, your data, as your modern day phone number. It should be yours and portable. Think of the apps as a modern day telcos. They should be interoperable. You shouldn't have to be on Instagram to talk to someone on Instagram. That's like saying in today's language, oh, I'm on AT&T. Are you on AT&T?
I'm not.
So our phone can work?
Yeah.
Oh, you're on
Right.
Verizon, we can't talk? Oh, really? It's obviously a much better telecom system when you're in Verizon and I'm on AT&T and we can talk, right?
Yeah.
It opens up possibilities. It's a network effect. The same thing will happen with the internet. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah. Well, Frank, unfortunately, we're out of time, but I want to thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more about your TikTok bid, and we'll be following that very closely.
Thanks. Thank you all.